All right, guys, so welcome to, I think this is our second annual candidates, I was calling it Candidates Night, but I guess it's now Candidates Hour here at the Fairhaven Library. I'd like to thank the library for letting us put this on. This is kind of an important, I believe it's an important thing to let our residents know where our candidates stand on the issues that are Fairhaven is facing. And it's kind of hard to get the truth outside beyond the noise that we see every day on, say, social media or just everyday life. So with that said, what I'd like to do is have everybody introduce themselves, let us know what position they're running for during this election, and then we'll start with, after we're done with that, we'll do a little meet and greet. You can explain why you're running, and I might throw some questions out there. So, sir, after you.
My name's Ron Stack, and I'm running for trustee of the library, 2 years.
I'm Judy Jeffrey. I'm running for the library trustee, and I'm running for 3 years.
Lillian Billowitz, I'm running for town auditor, 3 years.
Michael Dorn, I'm running for a 1-year select board.
Jason Coupal, I'm running for a 1-year seat on the select board.
Chad Vijay, I'm running for a 3-year seat on the select board.
And I'm Seal Hunt, and I'm running for a 1-year term as town moderator.
Thank you, sir. We'll start back over here with you. Can you explain why you're running for your seat here at the library?
I like to help out whenever I can, wherever I can, and I was asked to join mainly because they needed somebody to be on the board. And so I said, well, why not? And maybe I'll get to meet some more people.
Sure. It's a beautiful library.
Yes, it is, and it needs a little bit of help.
I'm running. I've been a patron of the library since I was little. Brought my kids here when they were little. Brought my grandkids when they were growing up, and they participated in Story Hour and the other children programs. And then when I retired from teaching, I became a volunteer and learned about the library, and then ran for the library board, been on that for about 10 years. And I want to continue being on the board. I think we have an excellent director and an excellent board that work together. And I think we're very proud of the library that we have. I think we're very fortunate that we have this resource for our town, but also for members of the surrounding towns. And I would invite any of you that have time to come to the library. Anybody would give you a tour and see what goes on here, because I think there's a lot to see.
So I have a question for our library folk. So I think it was on NPR, I'd heard, which I thought was a controversial statement, that people thought maybe libraries should be used for temporary housing for some of our homeless. Do you have a stand on that? Have you thought about this?
I have not thought about that. I would think that people who think that way are a little misguided, that the library is not for housing people, but for people to help further their education if possible. And that way maybe they could get a little bit farther in their life.
Sure.
I think we have resources here that they could use, but I don't think that we should be housing them.
Lily?
No, I don't believe that the library should be used to house people, but in emergency situations, like bitter cold, where if anybody's been following the hotel motel voucher system, there is a shortage. And perhaps during the cold, maybe, I don't know where the upstairs of the town hall has been renovated, in emergency situations in conjunction with Jim Heller, perhaps there could be some emergency overnight short-term for the homeless. I mean, we've spent, I don't know how much money on the renovating the upstairs, and that should be done by now. So perhaps, short-term, and maybe if there was a tour of the upstairs by the citizens, now that the project is completed, or they say, the public should go up there to see what could be extended to the community and potentially overnight sleeping.
All right, thank you. Would you like to talk about why you're running for auditor?
Oh, why I'm running for auditor is, last year, just before the election, there was an article, I believe, that said, I was asking the voters, should the elected position for auditor be abolished? And that was spoken about at the town meeting. And I decided to run because where it's by statute and it's part of the history of Vermont, I said, well, I might as well see what's going on. So, and because there's been a lot of things going on with finances, new projects undertaken. So I took the one remaining year of the 3. And then at the same town hall meeting, Mike Stannard said, well, I might as well run too. So he became a write-in candidate, and he took the 3-year. So there are 3 of us, because there's only been one, Glenn Roberts, for the longest time. So Glenn, I did run last year and I won. So there's Glenn, Mike, and myself. We've had a very, very good, I want to say productive year in where nothing has been more or less done, with only one auditor for so long. We've taken a broad perspective of that which it is that needs to be audited. There are so many different departments, ranging from water, recreation, DPW, administration. So we've made a more or less composite of where we should be looking. And one of the focuses would be on the grants, because there's an extensive amount of grant money that's coming in, which is true, which is good, but also the matching of the reserves. We've reviewed or listened to the town meetings, the select board meetings, where there's been some questions by the paid auditor, one of which is that things have been paid without purchase orders. I believe there were 6. So we've done a lot, and more or less set the groundwork, and have our focus set for the next 3 years. And hopefully, if I'm elected, I'll be part of that for the continuity of where we are and where we're going.
I'm breaking. That's on tape. Sir.
I'm running, I'm a lifelong resident of Fairhaven. I think Fairhaven's a great community. There's a lot of great residents in this town. We've got Scott that runs a Halloween contest. Myself and my wife started the Holiday Light Tour 2 years ago. Pep Murphy. I've been watching select board meetings. The potential of Skyline coming back to the area, the rec department being revitalized. So it kind of motivated me, other residents in town trying to keep Fairhaven going and bring it into the future, and want to be a fresh perspective to help Fairhaven grow. So yeah.
Jason.
This will be my second one-year term on the board if I'm elected. I have a long-standing belief in service wherever I am, and when I came to Fairhaven, I wanted to be able to offer the town my thoughts, my skills, and anything necessary to keep this town as wonderful as it is. I fell in love with it when I first came here and saw it, and I think that it is an absolutely wonderful place. And as I've learned more about it, I want to do what I can to make things better and to keep the traditions that we have, because we are a historical town with many, many beautiful things in it, and we should keep it that way. I've also been extended my service. I'm also on the Planning Commission here. I was recently appointed to the Marble Valley Regional Transit Board, which as the Fairhaven representative, and that is the board that controls the bus service, the bus that comes through here. We make the routes and things of that sort. I've also been working with CEDAR, the local chamber, to work with their committees as well. I want to do what I can to make this place, as I said, to make this place, thrive and prosper. And that really is my only goal, is to do that.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you to the library for hosting. I often think about why I run and why I participate as vigorously as I do, whether it's in town politics, involvement with state level committees, involvement in youth sports, and I always come back to home. And I, God willing, will be in this town for a very long time, unless I'm run out with pitchforks and torches.
Tar and feather.
But my kids are going to be here even longer, I imagine. And I'm interested in the initiatives that are going to take this great town and keep moving it forward to the future so it only grows its character even fuller over time. So that's why I run.
Ms. Hunt?
I'm running for town moderator. I've been the moderator since, I believe, 2012. And when I first moved to Vermont, it was a different government style than I'm, in Ohio. And, I would joke with my friends that if I wanted to talk to the governor, I just pick up the phone and call him. And that does not happen in Ohio, but it does happen in Vermont. And I love the whole town meeting where, folks could come and express their opinions. Opinions are like noses, we've all got them. And town meeting night, originally when I moved, we actually voted from the floor. Since then, we've gone to Australian ballot, but we still have that opportunity on the Monday night before town meeting day to come and say, yep, I love that idea, or nope, that's not for me. And we can do it in a civil manner. Do we have disagreements? Absolutely. And that's the part of being a democracy, is to be able to express your opinions and your points of view, but do it nicely. And so, so I love being able to say, all comments will be directed to the moderator. And nobody hates me. So it's like, so that's one way, you try to approach it with a sense of humor. We do deal with some pretty serious issues. There are some serious things happening in our world, and, these towns are little microcosms of the greater world, and we try to all get along. And that's what I love about living in a small town, where when my car battery died, 3 people came over to help before my husband got there. So it was really nice, because everybody knows everybody.
That is part of the joy of living and working in a small town.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows your name. It's just like going to Cheers. Yeah.
So I'll toss are you done?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay, so I'll toss a question out to the group. Feel free to chime in as you see fit. So we talked about living in Fairhaven, how great it is, growing it, making it better, protecting the history, which I think is so important for Fairhaven. So the history in Fairhaven, we want to add to it, right? We don't want to cover it over. We don't want to paint it over and make it a shiny new town. We want to grow that history. And I'll toss this out to our folks on the ballot. What do you see when we talk about growing Fairhaven? What is your vision, and how do you intend to protect that history moving forward? Anybody at all, or I call on you.
I'll lead the way, right? When I think about growing the town and protecting its history, I think we have to look at expanding the tax base first, right? We have a lot of land that we can develop houses on, and building houses and attracting homeowners to our town, is going to reduce the burden of the taxpayer as a whole, but B, it's going to allow more people to see just how rich our history is. I think there are and have been several initiatives since I've joined the board that have aimed to preserve history while also bettering the current state of infrastructure. And I think if we keep that blend moving forward, we're going to have better sidewalks, we're going to have better amenities while maintaining the history and culture of Fairhaven.
I agree. I recently joined Economic Development Committee, because that's one of the things that if we want to attract people to our community, they have to be able to make a living wage. And the only way they can do that is have a decent job. And for so long, we've missed out on having like Skyline, or places like that. In fact, I worked for one of the largest employers in the town of Fairhaven when I was at the Fairhaven Grade School. So, that's, and as much as I love the Fairhaven Grade School, they don't pay taxes. So, because they're an educational institution, so we need, like you said, to broaden our tax base and to be able to offer affordable housing. Affordable housing is a huge issue, not just in the state of Vermont, but pretty much everywhere. And again, it all goes back to being able to offer good, decent jobs. And one of the things that's really important about schools is that we hopefully are building a group of young people to be able to work in that workforce. Issues as a technology coordinator, kids would always say, Mrs. Hunt, when is something going to stay the same? And I said, never. I said, because change is the constant, and you always have to keep up. In fact, most of the jobs that, I've had 3 or 4 different jobs because the technology changes. AI, are we going to have, my son registers people at the hospital. Pretty soon that job's probably going to be phased out, just like when you go to the Red Cross blood drive. I used to have to do all that stuff, and now they do it themselves, with the computer. So, things are changing, and I think that it's hard, but I always put in the Fairhaven Society newsletter, we try to also not only talk about historical things, but what's happening today. Because 50 years from now, people are going to wonder what happened 50 years ago in Fairhaven that made that change. And if we don't document that, then folks won't know. And so, yeah, obviously, the history of Fairhaven is really important to me as a member of the Historical Society. But it's also important that we document current history, but allow things to change enough so that our neighbors have jobs and a place to live.
I heard a great quote. It was to celebrate your history, but don't live in the past.
Right.
Because things do change.
Right.
Would anybody like to respond to any of that?
Let's take a stab at it. I agree with everything that's been said, and the one thing that I think we all want is we want Fairhaven to thrive. And to do that, the only way we're going to be able to do that is not only to attract new homeowners, new businesses, but to ensure that we have a town that is functional so people don't want to leave. I mean, unfortunately, as many of you know, it's a tendency for small towns for the children to leave once they've gone through school. It is urgent and it is incumbent upon us to make sure that they want to stay, and there's a reason to it. And I think that there is a two-pronged approach. The first approach, I think, has to be that we have to make sure that this town is functional in every way, because no one is going to want to live in a town where the services are not available or there are significant infrastructure problems. I think more than anything, those are the problems that we should address first. We need to have functional sidewalks. We need to have the roads need to be cleared. We need to have the right equipment and the right personnel to deal with weather calamities and all sorts of things. I know this year we had a very bad water main break, and I was impressed beyond belief how fast our DPW people responded to that and how thoroughly they attacked the problem, because I can tell you, having lived up in places with much greater populations and much more infrastructure, having a water main fixed in less than 2 days is miraculous, and so I give credit for that. But to keep these people, we have to make sure that they are constantly valued. We need to make sure that they are paid correctly. We need to make sure that they are constantly reminded that the town of Fairhaven looks out for them. Because otherwise they may not have much of a reason to look out after us. The second prong, I think, is how to attract new people and business to Fairhaven. One of the things I will say is, having worked with Cedar and worked with the board regarding the transit, is one thing I'm hearing a lot is it's so nice to see someone from Fairhaven, because other municipalities in this area are very aggressive about seeking new businesses and new people. Obviously, Killington is one of them. There's Killington has a lot more money than we do, but again, they are there and they are seeking businesses and new housing. And I think that we need to make sure that we have a presence everywhere. Fairhaven is a significant town in this region, and I think that we need to be out there reminding people we are here, and we have things. We have resources that people and businesses should want. And again, I think we need to work on both of those at the same time, and aggressively so. I think that we should be as active as we all can be. I think that we should participate beyond our offices and do as much as we can to improve our reputation in this area. And I think that until we have a comprehensive plan like that moving forward, I'm concerned that we may lose our way, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I also agree. I think Fairhaven's at a really good point right now. We've got, for development, we've got 2 major tracts of land, that are up for sale right now. The potential Skyline coming back would be huge, and watching that select board meeting, their goal was to create affordable housing out of that factory if they get it retooled, which would be huge. And like you said, you've got to have jobs here. I mean, I've been here my entire life. I served in the Army 4 years, and I chose to come back here because I love this area. I mean, I could have stayed in Kansas, I could have stayed overseas, but I chose to come back here because this is where I'm from. I love this area. This is my hometown. And even Manager Gunter, your pitch for where you're from, how town properties or whatever, they gave them to residents to build on, that would help our tax base, getting more houses. That's kind of an interesting program. I think it'd be kind of cool to see where that would go or how that would work in this area, because there is a lot of vacant lots and older housing that, at this point probably should be torn down and start fresh, with something more energy efficient. So I think, Fairhaven's in a good position right now, and hopefully we can guide us that way to help grow the tax base and take a little bit of the tax burden off the residents that are here.
Anybody else like to?
Just to add to what Jason said, the idea of leaning into the surrounding communities to help enhance ours. I think it's no secret that Rutland has consistently looked toward Killington. There is a delegation of folks in Rutland that want to look the other side of the Route 4 corridor and work toward our way, and I think we have to create partnerships with them to understand and further develop the synergy between our economies. We have to do that.
So can I ask a question? Is that all right if I ask a question?
Yeah, feel free.
So you're saying that everybody, like Rutland looks at Killington. So I work for the Village of Polteny DPW. I'm currently an apprentice for the water wastewater. But Poltony's huge on biking. That town has boomed in the last few years. And we're, we share a border with Polteny. Has Fairhaven looked at tapping into that, adding trails to attract that business? I mean, you've got 3 bike shops in Polteny. You've got hundreds of people coming down there weekly to bike all over. I mean, mass tracts of land that are dedicated to that. And it's like, oh, why can't Fairhaven work with Polteny or connect trails and bring some of those people here?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I know that our recreation department has talked about building trails out as the rec department grows and develops. I think there's been some conversations with Polteny Select Board members about combining recreation efforts. I think a relationship between us and Polteny needs to exist and needs to enhance over time. I put Rutland out there because they are the largest economy around, and when they do well, we do well. And so how do we create that relationship so it not only helps us, but Poultney, Castleton, surrounding communities? But I agree, we should be working with Poultney. I know that they're a sporting rival, but healthy competition's always a good thing, right?
How many miles of snowmobile trails do they have in Poultney? Because that's huge too as well, isn't
I
it?
mean, but let's
I
be
see the
honest.
little stop signs.
Right,
everywhere.
let's be honest, the snowmobile industry around here's been non-existent
Right.
for at least 10 years, if not longer. I mean, I remember coming out of the Army in 2014 and buying a snowmobile, and I was lucky to put 50 miles on my sled without trailering it. And, you know, cost of VAS has gone up, cost of insurance has gone up, fuel, it wasn't worth trailering. I mean, they put the signs out, and I think we had 1 week this past winter of decent riding in this area, and that was it, and it was done. We don't get the snow like we used to. I think I've gone out and plowed maybe 5 times this winter. I've salted more than I've plowed.
No, just to follow up on that, I will say that it is important that we have relationships with the surrounding area. I mean, as many of you know, we already have mutual aid agreements in place with most of the towns around us to respond to emergencies. So oftentimes, if there's a very large emergency, you'll see fire trucks and police coming from Benson and Castleton and Poultney and even over the border in New York. It's a matter, I think, of building on that and being much more aggressive. It's absolutely a great idea that Fairhaven should work with Poultney or any other community to bring in recreation and things like that. It will only help us. And I think that, again, it seems that when I've been speaking to people in Rutland, it seems to be that, well, we're glad you're here. And it's like, well, we've been working, very hard to develop things, but again, it's not reaching some people. And I think that they are eager to hear our story and they are eager to help us do these things. And I think it's just a matter of aggressively, advocating for Fairhaven wherever we can.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, at this time, I'm gonna open it up to the floor, maybe we have some questions. Mr. Heyer.
Yeah, I guess this is for anybody, but probably the select board candidates. There's been stuff on social media about losing parking spaces. I don't know a thing about it. I've been told that a vote yes is actually a vote for no. I know more about school stuff than town stuff. I'm wondering if the candidates can maybe sort of explain it and suggest how we should vote on that.
I'll tackle that one. Okay. I don't know how many years ago, but several years ago, there was a study done on traffic patterns coming up through our downtown area. And the result of that survey, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, was that traffic needs to be calmed, and our sidewalks are too far apart between the gas station and the downtown, and it's not a safe crossing. I've witnessed many near accidents in that area myself. And so the engineers or architects of the study looked at developing parking configuration that would narrow that lane, slow traffic patterns, and allow for safer crosswalks. And so we look at the prospect of reconfiguring the parking spots in that plan. I believe it does result in the loss of a few parking spots near the buildings, while also adding more handicap parking in front of the buildings. And it adds spots in our free parking area, and it reconfigures that. So it looks more pleasant, and it doesn't look like we have a sea of concrete in town. I don't know how many times myself I've almost been hit because someone is trying to turn around in that triangle of concrete in front of the stores, because it's there, and why not turn around there? So it's really a safety measure.
I just did this morning, by the way.
Yeah, it's.
Can I admit that?
But
Or even
so-
just like backing out. I mean, backing out,
What's that?
The police are here.
you know.
Oh, dear.
And I'd like to speak as for traffic calming, that really needs to happen. I remember one time, now this was a few years back, I work with special needs people. I have a son with special needs, but this was someone I was working with. We left the corner shop that was there, started across the street. We're standing on the yellow line, and we have cars going on both sides of us. I held a Yeti cup, and I came about this close to putting it through a windshield. Because I was scared.
Do the other candidates have a position on this?
I'll offer,
I don't know enough about it, to be honest, to answer. I've kind of just found out about it. You know, I've kind of seen it over the years, kind of talked about the reconfiguration, but until last night on social media, there was an uproar about it, and it's kind of the first I heard about parking spaces, and I've kind of seen the signs around town the last couple days, but.
I think, how do the downtown merchants feel about it?
Well, I'll offer my thoughts on that. And first of all, I echo Chad in that to the extent that we can make the streets more safer, to calm traffic, and to make the crossings safer, absolutely, there is no question about that. My concern is this. The downtown development project was approved by a select board before I came in. And when I did come in and we began to contemplate certain issues regarding it, one of the things I was looking for was what is the scope of the project? What does it look like? And the first thing I asked for were some renderings, which in any project that an architect prepares, they do renderings. They're usually computerized pictures or images that approximate what it will look like. And I was surprised when there were none. I was told that there had been public hearings and the like. And yet, if you don't know what the project looks like, how can you possibly have an opinion on it? Ultimately, Joe had some drawings prepared by a student at Castleton who made some chalk drawings of it. But again, the problem is, I think, that it seems like many people don't know really what to expect. Now, you know, again, I was not there for the original discussions, but what I do know is I certainly didn't know as a select board member what to expect. I didn't know what the project looked like. All I had seen before those chalk drawings were some, you know, two-dimensional blueprints, and unless you are a contractor or an architect, most people can't visualize what the blueprints look like in real life. And that, I think, is the most important thing here, because ultimately what the project does in the downtown area is what's important. I mean, we can talk about greater issues such as traffic safety and traffic calming, but at the end of the day, we need to know what it is. And I can tell you that since I've been involved on the select board, I've received many, many messages from people, and they've added the same thing: is we had no idea that we don't know what's going on. Tell us what is happening. And really, a lot of them to this day don't know. And again, I'm very concerned when there is a project of this magnitude that is proposed, and the voters do not know exactly what it looks like. And, you know, again, you can have as many public hearings as you'd like, but if you don't show them what they're getting, at the end of the day, you've accomplished very little. And it seems that most of the business owners I've talked to have echoed that, which is we just don't know what's happening here. It is very important that we have appropriate parking down there. Even if there was more parking in the free parking area, people still have to cross a road to get there. It is, you know, I believe that, you know, the overarching feeling of the business owners down in that area is, you know, again, you're taking away most, if not all, of our parking spots in front of the buildings. How are you going to replace it? And really, I think a lot of them have not been able to get satisfactory answers. And to this extent, I don't want my thoughts to be seen as critical of anybody or the select board or any official. But again, the problem I see is before we invest money in a 7-figure project, we need to know what we're getting. And the other thing I would point out is we've heard a lot about grants and things that this is not a free project. A grant, we receive approximately 80% of the money from outside sources, but the town has to put in about 20% of it. My understanding right now is that we are still about $265,000 short of that number, and so I think certainly, you know, people want to know if this is what's going on. They want to know what they're going to get at the end, and I know that I've seen a lot of comments online, which is, you know, you're going to love it, it's great, and all of that. But again, whatever people's opinions are, other people's opinions are, in the end, don't matter. The voters should be able to independently review it, understand it, and then give their thought to it. Now, as for the article that is pending, it has been listed as an advisory article. What that means is that an advisory article under Vermont law is the statement of the voters as to their opinions. However, it is not binding on the select board, and we had a great deal of debate on how it would be listed as an article. But ultimately, as I said during that meeting, it's like I'm going to wait for the election and see what the consensus is of the voters. And whether or not it binds us as a town or not, I take that very seriously, because the voters, the only people that matter are the voters, because we work for you. And the only lens we should be looking through is what is best for the voters. So if we get a result back at this election that, that a majority of the town's voters don't want to change the parking, I think that it's incumbent upon the select board and the town manager to take that very seriously, and I hope that they do.
Let's let Lily go first.
Following up on what Jason said about the grants, aside from the physical changes that would happen, we as auditors, Glenn, Mike, and myself, have started to delve into where these monies are coming from. Obviously, there are grants, but then there's also the match to the grant. The part of that, when people vote, there's, on the ballot, you see, shall the voters of Fairhaven appropriate, or from the budget, put money into? A lot of it is the Streets and Sidewalk Reserve Fund. And a lot, if not the majority of the people I've spoken to, or those who have actually come to me, want the streets and the sidewalks fixed, the side streets here. But from what we understand, and this is a preliminary, but we believe it's true, we're looking into it, is that some of the reserve funds that the taxpayers, a lot of the taxpayers, believed were going to fix, let's say, this street, that street, the sidewalks, that money has been moved to other projects, particularly the, what they call free parking, which is a depletion of what the reserve is. And when you deplete a reserve, then you've got to fund it again. So that means that the town is going to be asking for more money for streets and sidewalks. As far as a binding, with this, I'm glad it's out. I'm glad this is out for the taxpayers. If this is advisory, which means it's non-binding, but the majority, as Jason and a lot of people are looking at, what's going to happen next Tuesday, there is pursuant to statute a way to make an article binding. And the way that happens is if there are certain categories that if the taxpayers, let's say particularly it's their money, it's our money no matter what, if the article to be binding affects, I believe, the taxpayer money, that way it has to go on the ballot. Now, March 5th is going to come and go, and this one is advisory. If the majority of the voters say, no, this is not right, we don't want bump outs, we don't want this, leave it alone, and no, we don't want the money that we thought were going to fix the side streets going for this new project. We want this stopped. That can be put on the ballot, but it has to be done by a special election, all pursuant to statute, which means a certain amount of percentage of the voters have to sign for it, then it would go on the ballot binding. So if, let's say, however many voters say, no, we don't want it now, but the answer is yes, 23 is yes, but no, we don't want anything changed, advisory, it can become binding if it passes on the other side. So aside from the physical, we, Mike, Glenn, and I, as auditors, are looking very, very, very hard at the cost to this and the money that's being pulled from Streets and Sidewalks Reserve. And that's something that if I get elected, we'll be continuing to watch. Grant money, like Jason said, is not free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. It costs, not only it costs when you pull from it, the reserve, then you've got to replenish it. Because everybody puts money inside and says, oh, this is for the cable bill, oh, this is for this is this. Then all of a sudden you say, oh, well, I've got this money tucked away, I'll pull it. And then it's like, oh yeah, cable bill is still due. I've got to replenish it. So all this money that's been pulled has to be replenished.
Any more questions? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry,
I wanted to respond because there's a few things that I'm kind of struggling with. I think the idea of telling the voters that it's either this downtown project or the side streets is a little misleading. Why can't it be both? Why can't we, as a town, invest in infrastructure in a way that everything gets addressed? That's something that I struggle with hearing. The other piece to that is I really think we have to do a better job at providing context to the articles that are on the ballot. And when you read a ballot item that says, do the voters wish to not change the parking configuration, there is a lot of information that is left off of that ballot. And so folks are going to vote on an advisory article. Some may be very well informed. Some might not have any idea and they don't want to see parking changed. I think a better solution might be to have another focus at a meeting looking at the project and what it entails and get more feedback from the town rather than a contextless vote. That's just my opinion. I think we need to be more transparent with the voters.
And I would echo that too. I do believe that we should be striving to do everything, whether not only making the streets safer, but also fixing the sidewalks and doing all these projects. And I also agree that there is a good deal of context lacking. I mean, if I came in off the street and saw this article, I would have to ask a lot of questions to find out some very basic information. But I think that also can be laid at the feet of those who are advocating for the project. I mean, what the overwhelming sentiment I'm getting is not that people hate it or that they disagree with the change of the downtown, is they just don't know enough about it. And I think that one of the things we need to strive for in the future for any project that we're going to do of this magnitude is we need to make sure the voters know what they're asking for. And, without that sort of transparency, we're going to come into this issue again and again. And obviously, not everyone will be happy. There are always going to be people complaining. There will always be competing Facebook opinions. And that's as Seal said, that's a democracy, and people have their opinions. But at the same time, I think that we need to make sure that we always are transparent and we always give context so that people can form these opinions intelligently. And to your suggestion that we have a meeting to discuss the project, absolutely. I really think that it is incumbent upon us to sit down with everybody that we can, and also not only to have a meeting, but maybe to have someone go and speak to the individual business owners. Let them ask the questions that are specific to their own business, and then let us try to explain how their business will be affected. I think with all that in mind, I think that a lot of the friction that we've seen and the blowback we're getting, I think a lot of it would not be there, and then people could simply they could simply decide.
Okay. Any more questions?
Skyline coming back. Where would Skyline go?
I believe from the select board meeting I watched, I think they're looking to revitalize the current building if all possible. I think that meeting was 2 months ago. I can't remember who the gentleman was or what organization it was, but I think they were asking to study, and they've kind of been in talks, I believe, with Camara's, potentially to let them stay owners or sell the building or whatnot. But
They're not gonna build something.
no, I believe from watching the meeting, and the current select board would have more information because I'm sure Bob Richards or any of these gentlemen can answer that. But watching that and seeing the potential of that coming back was huge. I mean, very young, but I remember when Skyline was very active in this area.
Does Skyline still own it? The building?
No, Camara's own, I believe.
right.
Yeah, it's they own. I think that whole track right there, the bowling alley, the Skyline, and then their
mean the church now?
the church. Yeah, that's still it'll always be the bowling alley to me.
But no, I think that.
I'm sorry, your name is?
Jason Coupel.
Okay.
As I understand it, the project is, the idea behind the project is that it will revitalize an existing building. In other words, that building that is now owned by Camaro was previously used for the manufacture of homes, and then it would be updated and reused for that purpose. Bob Richards told me that Skyline moved their headquarters, I think it was to Utica, New York, and
I'm not sure where they're, I think
Right,
it's probably still.
right. And so the idea is that Vermont right now has such a serious housing shortage that building manufactured homes is one solution, and that is the idea. Now, it is something that that Cedar and the local development organizations are investigating right now. It is strictly at an investigatory stage. There are no commitments. There's no guarantee that it will be done, but it's a thought. And certainly, if not that, then certainly I would hope that they would explore other uses for it, because, as it is, the building is fairly underutilized right now. And, we need something brought to this town that is going to bring more jobs. And, I think it's a wonderful idea, because again, we're moving right back into a facility that is already designed for the purpose that it's being, contemplated for. And
And I believe, not to interrupt, they said it was pretty much almost most of the existing equipment is still in there, correct? So yeah, I don't think they said it'd take a whole lot to get it up and running again.
I mean, again, it's one of those things where, they're at such an early stage in the process that all sorts of things can come up. And, also, it's dependent upon whether Camaro wants to actually allow that use too. I mean, I think I'm not sure exactly what it's being used for right now, but, that it's always going to be contingent on that, because, it's not as if the town or another municipality owns the property. So, but I hope, I really thought it was very exciting. I was really glad to hear it, and I hope that it comes to fruition.
Let's do Scott and then.
First off, I want to thank the ones from the select board that are here that have jumped on the Facebook page that I do and made comments and explained some things. I actually signed the petition to have it put on the ballot, because when they brought it to me, I had two different drawings of the downtown that they showed me, and none of them were any of the ones back when we had done the stuff before. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess something's changed somewhere that I didn't know about. But that was why I did it. But I appreciate you guys jumping on the page, because I post stuff, or someone will post stuff. I don't know everything there is that's going on in town. So it's very great when you got people that have the know that come on and explain it.
I mean, your page is a great resource. I realize that sometimes the debate can get very heated,
And I try not to. I ran into some issues a while back.
Sure.
And one of the biggest problems is I wasn't able to monitor the page.
Right.
I mean, I was going back and forth to Dartmouth with my wife, who was treating cancer, and the last thing I was thinking about was really paying attention to the page.
No, I mean, as an admin of a page like that, which solicits people's opinions, it's always difficult, because as you can see, when a topic is of interest to people, it could go for days and days and days.
Oh, yeah.
But I appreciate what it is. I mean, I think it goes back to the issue of transparency. We need to be able to, we have meetings once every 2 weeks. A lot of people, we don't have a great attendance. I know a lot of people, thankfully, have PEG TV and they can watch it. But the thing is that it's not a job that we only occurs when we go to a meeting. We are around 24/7, and so there should be some sort of outlet where we can say, hey, if you've got a question or please let us know, and we'll do our best to respond.
Yeah, and one of the objections to me allowing the stuff on the page is so that people can talk about it, get it out in the, and stuff. And so, like, people like you guys can say, oh, wait a minute, we got a problem here, we need to, maybe
Exactly.
get some information out.
And again, I think we all know that, again, that sometimes people are going to say things that really aren't helpful or aren't productive.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that most of us, from our experience, in our positions and in life, we know how to kind of filter that out a little bit. But yes, having something there where we can get this information is always very, very important.
Well, I appreciate it. Anytime you guys want to kick in, no problem. Because you have information I don't.
Let's do Bob first.
But just as a, I don't want to take your time, you know, the Skyline project is a shorthand for, Skyline will not be part of that project, but it's the Skyline building. There's a $160,000 study to go through the entire plant, see what's there, what isn't there, what somebody who would take up that building, either as a lease from Camara or as a buy from Camara, to put in, and it is built to, the study will lean towards affordable housing. So trailers and modulars. So we should have answers by the end of summer, beginning of fall, on a proposal, so we can send, so Cedar and other people can send it out to the prospective buyers or leasers of that project. So right now, it's in very much planning stage, but the board has been behind it and will say nothing. So that's where we're at. And it's good enough to call it Skyline, but Skyline will not be part of it.
Right. Thank you for that.
Oh, any more questions? Otherwise, Mr. Hack.
There's a recreation article, correct? A rec article, or no?
No,
No.
no. So the recreation budget has expanded in our proposed budget. So all of the things that the recreation committee is looking to do is within the town budget.
Because I've seen people say support the rec fund, and I thought we were gonna vote on that separately.
That is all together.
Okay, would any of you like to speak to that? To what's happening with,
Well, I mean, at least at first, I'd like to defer to the man who knows recreation better than any of us.
So there has been overwhelming support to expand recreation offerings. And in order to manage such a task, we're looking at bringing in a full-time recreation director with the purpose of tending to our facilities, providing upgrades, while also expanding offerings to folks of all ages. So recreation will not,
Pickleball, right?
pickleball,
That's
whatever,
for
you know,
my age.
we mentioned trails. You know, the idea is people of all ages should experience our parks and recreation. And that's what this budget is looking to do.
And I would also say that, I mean, one of the things that surprised me, I mean, it was a pleasant surprise, was how many of the kids in Fairhaven and from areas around participate in these recreation programs. It is, I think the number was, what, 700, I think you said, or?
I'd have to take a look again, but
It was
in the hundreds.
It was in the hundreds, and it was, you know, that to me is quite impressive. So I'm very, very pleased that the rec committee has come up with some very good ideas, and that those ideas are now funded.
So they are funded now. It's not on the ballot?
So the current budget for recreation director, correct me if I'm wrong, is $10,000. That's
The fiscal year
current.
we're in, moving forward, it
Current.
may or may not be different.
That's going to cover some summer activities, right? We also have a line item for baseball and softball. That's $5,000.
And it's a done deal. It's already in place.
That's already in place. But in order to expand and come up with activities for kids who maybe don't partake in baseball, and expanding year-round so we can get more activities, not only just the summertime, we have to invest money in that.
I mean, and one thing I guess you can say is because the voters will be voting on the total budget, you are in fact voting on, as part of that, as to our recreation budget. So in fact, you do have a say on that. It's just not a separate line item.
Mr. George, do you have anything to say about rec?
I think it's great that, you know, and I believe, if I'm correct, they want to be self-sufficient, correct, the rec department after this. And I think it's great. Growing up in this area, there really wasn't a whole lot, like if you didn't play baseball or basketball, there wasn't really a whole lot of options for you to, so having young kids and seeing, you know, we're asking for a full-time rec department or rec director and revitalizing it, I think is huge, you know, and I fully support it.
Does anybody else have an opinion on recreation? Before we move on to more questions. Okay, next question.
I just wondered what the condition of the court was. Does anybody know?
The basketball courts?
Yeah, and what would, you know, we'd be able to use for pickleball?
Yeah, so my impression of the courts is that they are serviceable for basketball, but there's plan to retop it and paint on some pickleball courts. So there would be both basketball and pickleball.
Getting back to, there were some comments in the, when they did a profile on the three of you running for office, there was a comment on the local option tax that it's under discussion again. And the reason for that is stated is that because there were some changes in the law recently. It was voted on 2 years ago, and I was wondering if you could just elaborate on what those changes are?
I can say, because I was the one who brought up that issue, that I'm not sure if the quote was exact, but what the issue was on that is that what we have accumulated more data on that from other towns and municipalities as to what they have produced from the option tax. The option tax, there are a lot of different areas to which it can be applied. One of the more common ones is cannabis, and this is throughout New England where it's been legalized. There are, you know, Massachusetts, for example, is a mandatory town tax. We have the option of adding it on. I know that it's been voted down, you know, more than once. I know that we had a discussion about getting other sources of revenue in, and that came up again. Obviously, I think what he did quote correctly in the article was, I said, I'm a little bit concerned about proposing it because I think that the town has previously expressed its disapproval for this. And certainly, we don't want to do anything that, you know, the whole point, I think, of the option tax is increasing revenue from sources outside of Fairhaven. When people come in to the cannabis shops or other places, the whole point is we don't want to dump an additional burden on our taxpayers. And so, but we have seen some figures that are promising that show that it can be a source of many thousands of dollars. If this is nothing that is written in stone, it's something really that we're looking at. You know, again, we have to tread carefully on this, but again, I think that as we've said before, it is important we have some sort of other revenue other than merely our property taxes. And, you know, to the extent we can find anything that would be helpful, I think we should explore it.
I appreciate your thoughts on that, and I appreciate your way of thinking, because I think an issue that people have had in the past is that you get $100,000 of revenue, but what do you have for expenses? And if the expenses are $120,000 of Fairhaven money going into that, because we only get less than 70% back.
Right.
So I appreciate the way you're approaching it.
Right, and again,
data is what's going to drive.
Sure, and I think the other thing is that is something that people don't realize, that simply because we would collect an option tax, we don't get it all. There's a portion that's going to go to the state, and so, you know, it is, you know, because of the fact that there are such concerns like you've expressed about the cost of administering and everything else, we have to be very, very careful, because I wouldn't want to see a situation where we put one in place and then all of a sudden it was producing, you know, far less than it was worth.
Does anybody else want to speak to the option tax? Sir.
I like how Jason put it, and the feedback that I had received after previous elections, I wasn't on the board at the time when it was up for election in the past, was the uncertainty and the unknowns. We just didn't have enough information, right? And a lot of folks that I know that turned it down was because of that lack of information. What I'm interested in is gathering that data, that information, and saying, hey, here's what it could really be, you know, and then approaching with some sort of request.
Hang on. Anybody else with questions? Okay, sir, it's up to you.
Can the option tax be only applied to the cannabis shops?
My understanding is that it can be applied to certain segments. If I'm not mistaken, I think probably Bob and Glenn know a little bit more about that than I would. I understand that it can be tailored so it goes in certain places. But again, it's, we have to, and that's, I think, one of the things, if we were ever considering asking the voters to approve one again, we would have to do. Because, for example, one of the options, I know that there are some food taxes that are available. We already have a 10% state tax on takeout food, and that's a very punishing tax, And so, obviously, we don't want to do anything that makes that worse. Again, we're looking to focus on people who are coming into our town and using our resources and taxing them rather than they're here.
I always think about the campers, that from out of state that, use our roads to get to our beautiful state parks along the way. And I think about the state of how Scotch Hill looks.
That's terrible.
know.
We camp at Half Moon quite a bit, and it's either take the Creek Road or Scotch Hill, and I would rather drag my camper up Scotch Hill than go around Creek Road. And that's puts a lot of wear and tear on my
I was
vehicle.
gonna say, take a look at if you go the Creek Road, take a look at the telephone poles on the side of the road. where campers-
Anywhere near like Point of Pines, you one wrong move and you're going to the
Oh, yeah.
lake. So I'll take the big potholes over ending up in the lake.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, I lived up there
Yeah.
for the first 10 years. We lived in Fairhaven, and
But it is. Scotch Hill is, you've got a swamp pretty much in the road. It's bad.
Encroaching.
It's like I said, what's the best option to get there? Creek Road or Scotch Hill?
and most do go Scotch Hill,
Yep.
just from experience from living there.
Right.
And
I mean, the traffic up to the parks, I would think, if Scotch Hill wasn't available, would be far, far less, and it would also reduce state revenue, but you'd think that the state would want to make sure that all roads lead to them. Unfortunately, they don't seem to be willing to step up and share the cost of it.
Well, I remember when a year or so after we moved up there, they tore the road down, dug it down, put it back, but apparently they didn't do something right, because when I drove up through there a year ago I hadn't been up through there in quite a while, I was like, holy cow, this is all falling apart.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
And did you have more to say other than stopping at Scotch Hill?
No, that's,
that was it.
but it illustrates, needs that we have that can be solved with a potential local options tax, where visitors are paying into that source and helping us with our infrastructure that they're utilizing. So that's one example that comes to mind.
Any more questions?
I'll open my mouth. I do have a comment that part of the problem with this town is just deferred maintenance on everything. I mean, look at the town office. It's literally falling in. The ceiling upstairs is bad, the roof is bad, the soffits are rotten, the roads are bad. At some point, we've got to stop just paying the bill for today and look ahead, and we should have 5-year plans for everything. And that's been sorely neglected for 30, 40, 50 years, sadly. And that goes to board after board. It's not a this board problem, it was the board before problem, the board before that problem. And until we look at the great picture, and bring people into this town, but they're passing through. And there's really nothing here to hold them, even for a small part of town, a beautiful park, but they don't come, they bypass it. And when I was on the planning commission, the big thing was, how do you bring people in? And we're still asking that question. And the great thing about, the new roads going through just bypassed every town, and some figured out how to live with it and how to use it to their advantage, but we have not. Sadly, it's a beautiful town. And I don't know that I think that taxing all of us again in a different way to make that money, because we don't have the visitors coming in. So it's not a tax on people buying things, it's another tax on us. And I think that's my concern is, I'm not, and I'm certainly not for the, give it to the out-of-staters. There's gotta be an answer. I don't know what it is, but I don't know that another tax on the people of this town is really the answer.
I would say that, I mean, that, you know, having been used to much larger municipalities than Fairhaven, I do know that it is almost, you know, ubiquitous that larger municipalities, counties, and states, they do plan ahead in that way. They have 5 to 10 year plans for virtually everything. And whether or not it ultimately comes to fruition is another story, but at least they have a guide book to where they're going. And I think that we would be, you know, it would behoove us to actually have plans like that for the town, that when we are contemplating, you know, issues, that we always be, you know, not only looking at what we need for the moment, but looking ahead 5 to 10 years as to what we will need. And while I know that it has been done in some aspects of town governance, in others it's missing. And so it's something I think when I had said in that newspaper interview that I had said that we need a comprehensive long-term plan, that's part of it. And I think that unless we do that, we're going to constantly be facing, you know, headwinds, you know, because when you're fixing things as they happen without making plans for the future, it's always going to be more expensive and less effective.
Joe, I have one more comment. I know this library has a 5-year plan.
Yes, we do.
And I think that's why this library is such a shining example of what should happen in this town. Look, you're in this room that's, I don't know, now it's probably what, 20 years old? But we take care of this room and it's used a lot, but it doesn't look like it's used a lot. And, you know, upstairs you're not gonna find leaky roofs, you're not gonna find, you know, carpet coming up, you're not gonna find holes in walls. You're not gonna find any of that because this building has been loved by a group of people for 118 years, 116 years, and it's a group of people who just pass on that love of the building and the history of the building. And that's what needs to happen in every aspect of this town, is the love that people feel for this Carnegie Library needs to be spread to the other buildings and the park railings and just to come into the town and see everything freshly painted and not just falling apart. That's what's going to bring people here. Not walking, you know, by and seeing the roads with potholes and the sidewalks a mess. And, you know, look to this building as your example of what can happen and what can be done with a 5-year plan constantly being renewed.
Comments?
She did mention the fence painting.
I did.
And there are 2 great people in this room who did that. So thank you, Carl Scott and Joe Gunther, who took down every one of those railings and sanded and painted them.
So Carl, what was your total?
Well, by the way you count 240, 120 sections, two rails per section.
240? How many did I get? Like 80?
41 sections.
I was just kind of meandering.
So the Historical Society is trying to find groups and organizations, and I'm going to go to the Rotary in a few days and ask. So now we're going to polish that marble on the fence so that it's hopefully ready for the Memorial Day observance in May.
Can I ask a question about that? Polishing it? Is it?
We have cleanser for marble. We have marble polish, marble.
We should be using B2 on it. I'm sorry, we'll discuss this later.
It's something that, it's something that the historians told us we have to do with the marble. Or marble people told us to do with the marble.
Okay.
It was not my job.
All right.
Victoria will know.
We'll talk.
Victoria and Lorraine are on that.
We'll talk after.
Now, the only comment I'll make is I believe that this is one of the 4 Carnegie libraries left in the state of Vermont.
Yeah.
And I believe, from what I understand, this is one of the in the best shape, and it's been maintained beautifully. And it is a gem, but then again, so is the rest of this town. So,
1906, this building.
yeah.
It's 10 years, yeah, it's 10 years older than the school, and the school's 1916.
Wow.
No, we'll fight about this later.
Okay.
You're wrong on the school.
The school opened in 1917, but the stone says 1916. If
Ladies
you
and
look
gen-
behind all that ivy.
Ladies and gentlemen, democracy at work.
That's right.
Any more questions for today?
I hate to battle with Danny on
Can I
facts
ask
about history.
I mean,
Can I ask anything about the warning for the voting for the upcoming?
This Tuesday?
Yeah,
which question?
I guess I can. Do we really need to spend $100,000 on a surveillance system?
I think that's up to the voters.
And what would we get out of said surveillance system?
So I do know that repeatedly, our town green and our playground has been vandalized over and over and over again, and we keep pouring money into fixing that vandalism. How it makes for a very difficult job for our police officers to figure it out when it's, no one saw it, and so this I believe is an article related to keeping our parks and our playgrounds safe and hopefully deters some vandalism. Ultimately, it is up to the voters, but it could certainly, I would imagine, get some immediate use.
And I know, like I said, there has been a lot of vandalism. So, like IBC sees it pretty much every time they put on a display or put the stick figures out, and then you get on Scott's page and people are like, "Why don't we have this security system? We don't, So I think we do need it. I mean, you've got, like I said, one of the reasons running, you have these great individuals in this town that are trying to make this place a better place, but it gets old and you get burnt out when you're constantly trying to make it better and people sit there and vandalize your work. So I think, and let's be honest, you're being tracked. You've got a cell phone, you're being tracked. So there's cameras everywhere.
Well, that's the part of my question, is $100,000?
I mean, you can't just have, you can't.
For that amount of money?
Is it just for the parks though, or is it just for the town office and everything, right?
I think it's for,
I think, Joe, you'd probably be best to speak.
Yeah,
to
I
that.
can answer that a little better than everybody else. So this system will cover the playground down behind the school, which was also a request by the school because, they have buy-in for that area. They don't want to see their things damaged either.
Right.
So it's going to cover that. It's going to cover the town green. And we currently have a system in town hall. So it's going to cover town hall. On the interior, expanded a little bit. So for example, the clerk's office will have a camera by her vault. And then exterior cameras on town hall to catch a kind of panoramic view of the park and then everything in the front. And this, not to overstep because we're supposed to shine a light here, but we've had a lot of bad vandalism and it's been impossible to stop. It happens, at 2 a.m.
So, okay, so it's $100,000 to install it. How much will it cost to maintain?
So this system.
How much do you think that would cost to maintain on a yearly basis?
So the system we have is very minimal maintenance since I've been here for the last 6 years. I think we had to replace one cable from the basement up to the exterior camera.
Yeah.
I don't want to say nothing, Ivan, because everything takes some kind of maintenance. I don't have a hard number to give you. But what I've seen with what we currently have is like a 20-year-old system.
Right.
And it's been functioning this long.
Who's the vendor that's supplying it, that's to put it in if we're voted?
It's got to go out to bid.
Oh.
So
it's not even out to bid yet.
No, I did get 2 quotes to kind of figure out what about an estimate of this would be.
And you came to $100,000.
Taking the 2 and combining them and taking an average, yeah. So I took 2 quotes.
Right.
And
I
then
believe the language says up to a certain amount. Okay, so it's not actually that amount, it's up to that amount.
I see.
Yeah, it could come in
Lower.
It could come in less,
Oh.
not more.
And at least with newer cameras, there'll be better vision. I know that the school, over the years, has had cameras pointing at the playground, and I've spent a lot of time looking at very grainy pictures.
No, it's something actually, if you look, just with home security cameras and the doorbell cameras, the resolution has come like by leaps and bounds in less than 10 years. So yeah, certainly anything that is been there for any length of time is going to be, is probably, is outdated certainly and not as functional. So we're hoping that this one will last? I mean, what are we looking at in terms of time, Joe? Like at least 10 years, maybe more?
So what we have now, again, is 20 years old, so at least that long.
Right, and anything in the technology world, like we're seeing it down in Pontley at the water plant, all our stuff is 20 years old and it's time to upgrade and replace because it's obsolete. You can't get parts. It's cost way too much to keep it going. So,
Would that be the only scope of it?
I mean, my understanding, for now, that seems to be the scope of the plan. I mean, obviously, if we have a system set up, certainly it can be expanded to some extent.
I have these worries of like turning into a London.
Where everything-
there's so many cameras
That's true.
everywhere. You know, and
all the British,
George Orwell
right.
is like spinning in his grave.
It's those British crime shows where they're always solved because there are 17,
Yeah.
CC cameras on the same block.
CCTV.
No, I don't think it's ever. I mean, there's a specific purpose behind it. We're not tracking people. We're just wanting to make sure that our areas are secure. And I've seen some of the vandalism that's happened, and it's just it's very sad. And so, over the life of a camera system, we probably would spend that on fixing vandalism, and so or more. I mean, we've spent. I mean, for that bathroom down at the fields, we've spent a ton of money on that.
Just in Windows.
And literally the minute we get it done, it's someone's doing it again.
Who's doing that?
We don't know.
Why is
We
it
don't know.
there?
We don't. Well,
Why is that chair there to begin with? Because somebody burnt it out.
yeah. So there you go. There you go.
Okay, more questions? Any final thoughts from our folks up here?
Just, we have an Irish show Thursday evening.
6:30,
Who would
Ken
like to
McCraw.
come? It's at 7 o'clock. We have an Irish musician and we have refreshments.
6:30.
6:30,
Is it a
6:30.
new one or one we've had before?
No, he's
A new
new.
person. So come and enjoy.
What day was it?
Thursday.
Thursday, March 7th, here, 6:30. It'll be upstairs. And hopefully, the lift will be done.
Okay, good. Well, everybody, thank you for coming. That's what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.